What's up, guys? I'd been hot, but 0-3 yesterday, plus my horse came in dead last. My favorite horse. That's not great. Although I only threw like fun money on the Kentucky Derby. I don't really make serious bets on it because I don't feel like I know enough about it. But 0-3 yesterday, should not have played the basketball game. And I mean, I kind of bucked the power ratings in that one because I thought it was a good situation for Denver. But I don't know what to think, man. Maybe Denver is not exactly who we thought they were, or maybe Minnesota's really ready to take that next leap experience-wise, because they are certainly good enough. It's just an experience factor there. Those two baseball games, I'm not even sure they were necessarily the wrong side. Jared Jones pitched really well, and then whoever that guy making his debut was for the Mets, was it Christian Scott? Was that his name? I feel like I'm making something up. It was something like that. Christian something. He's a good Christian boy. Both of those pitchers did really well. I think they both allowed no runs. So it's like, I mean, what else can you ask for? Oh, yeah, you can ask for the team's offense to actually do something for once. Pittsburgh couldn't even hit against Colorado, and they wound up winning, but winning by one, I think, on a walk-off. So that's not helpful when you're laying a run line. Maybe I should have just paid the extra price to lay the one, the straight up one, or maybe the money line. Oh man, it's just, if I played these games differently, I could have won both baseball games, and the under hit really easily in that Mets game, which was the way I was very close to going under on that, and then I just didn't like the bullpen situation. I got to stop second guessing this, man. That is bad, but it was a 0-0 game into like the sixth inning or something, and then Mets just could not hit at all, and they wound up losing 3-1. Well, we'll move on to today. Oh, and I guess I will say congratulations to my Boston Bruins. They played horribly, but they still did it. They actually didn't play that bad early on in the game. They actually seemed to be the more aggressive team from what I could see. I actually wasn't watching the game because I was at a show, but I came out of that game and I was getting some texts, and the entire city of Boston was just in a wild state last night. I was like, well, that could mean that they either got eliminated or that they won. I can't even tell. There's just all this drunken mayhem everywhere. I don't know what's going on. Traffic everywhere. Trying to get an Uber out of the city is just insane. And then I'm like, oh, well, I'm getting the text. All right, they won. I got to look at the highlights. Bruins played pretty well offensively early on in that game. I would say it seemed like they were pretty aggressive, which was good. But then they just really started lapsing later in the game, and it was still a 0-0 game. And they gave up two shorthanded breakaways. So Swayman absolutely saved their ass, as has been the case throughout the entire playoffs so far, really. Swayman was the MVP of that series, without question. I mean, he is the reason why they advanced, because it's certainly not the Bruins' offense, but the Bruins have just completely had these lapses in the neutral zone or whatever. You can't give up two shorthanded breakaways like that. And they were both in crucial moments in a 0-0 game late in the game, in a span of not that much time either. One happened right after the other, and Swayman had to make really great saves on them. That's ridiculous. And then to make it even more ridiculous, it was 1-1 at the very end. Toronto actually had scored first to take a 1-0 lead, and the Bruins scored with, 9 minutes left in the game or something to tie the game. It's tied 1-1. Final seconds of the game, I think 2 seconds left in the game, and the puck is in the Bruins zone. Just got to clear it, get it out of there, go to overtime. Wotherspoon, one of the Bruins defensemen, one of the guys in their last line of defense, I think, probably their worst defenseman. For some reason, he winds up hitting the puck backwards with a decent amount of force towards his own goal, and Swayman has to make a quick, unexpected save on that with 2 seconds left. So the Bruins almost had one of the most embarrassing moments in hockey history. They almost lost on an own goal with 2 seconds left in regulation in the game. Like, nobody would have ever let Wotherspoon they wouldn't have let him let that down. That would have been like a Bill Buckner type of moment. He would have been that guy in Boston from now on. Luckily for him, nobody recognizes him or knows who the hell he is. But that was, or they would, I guess, after that, if that had happened. So he should be buying Swayman some gifts, man, because Swayman absolutely saved his ass. And the Bruins did have one excellent play in early on in overtime that won the game, setting up Pasternak. Great play to win the game there on that goal there in overtime. So they did at least do that. We'll see what they can do in the next round. Speaking of hockey, I got a game today, and this is really more of just I'm going to fade the public sentiment type of play here, although I see basically market agreement on this. I'm playing the Carolina Hurricanes here, man. I'm going to lay, what can we lay on this right now? They're a road favorite. So I think the sentiment here, you can lay minus 111 right now. Looks like they're up from minus 110 to minus 113. I think the public sentiment is going to come in and look at this and think, wait a minute. We're getting the Rangers. The Rangers are like the most popular picked team in hockey. Wait a minute. We're getting the Rangers as a home underdog here. You're telling me generally they're considered to be like the top team right now in hockey, but the odds makers are telling you they're not actually the best team in hockey and that Carolina actually is the better team. I agree. Carolina is the better team. The metrics, power ratings, guys, they tell you Carolina is the better team. Carolina is certainly the better defensive team. Comes to playoffs, man. I like that defense. I like Carolina here. And I think even after the first round, Carolina's series felt a little bit closer than Washington than the Rangers did. The Rangers, I think, swept that series, right? And nobody even remembers that series. This was just an easy win for the Rangers, whereas Carolina struggled a couple times against the Islanders. The Islanders had a 3-1 lead in one game. I think they won at least one game in this. I think it was only one, but they won one game in the series. So the public sentiment is just going to be the Rangers are the better team. We're getting them as an underdog. That is so easy. Take the Rangers, right? Well, again, like I say, not so fast. The odds makers are giving you information, man. They're telling you who they think the better team is here. And I agree. 65% of the tickets on the Rangers, 64% of the cash on the Rangers. So Rangers are a public home underdog, which is never really a team you want to be on. It is the square side. They have less of the cash than the tickets. The line has moved up slightly on the side of Carolina. That's where I'm going, fading the public on that one. I agree. Carolina's the better team. I'm taking the defense. I have Carolina in my bracket. I thought that this game one might set up decently for a play on Carolina here to fade the public sentiment, and that is what I'm going to do. Carolina will be the play in hockey. Vegas-Dallas also played today in Game 7 as Vegas forced a Game 7 after Dallas won the middle 3 games of the series to take a 3-2 lead after falling down 2-0. Series returns to Dallas. Dallas looks like they opened at a plus 135 underdog according to pregame. I don't think that's accurate. I think it probably was minus 135, and now it's up to minus 144. So we do see movement, cash coming in on Dallas, 86% of the cash and only 68% of the tickets. So I'm not going to be playing this one, but I do lean to the Dallas side there, in agreement with that. It's coming down to a Game 7. It's revenge for Dallas, which means a lot for last year for getting eliminated by Vegas in the conference finals. This is it, man. It's at home. Dallas has really been the better team in the series and are the slightly better team, which the odds makers have been telling you throughout the series. That all plus revenge. It's not quite strong enough for me to want to actually do it, but I like Dallas in that one. And then because it's a Game 7, I just default to liking an under as well. But it's 5.5 juice to the under. Under still was an easy win in the Bruins-Toronto game yesterday, though. And Vegas-Dallas has had some pretty low-scoring games later in that series as well, just like Bruins-Toronto did. But still, these teams start playing more intense defense, just like in the NBA as the series moves on and it's a close series. 88% of the tickets and 98% of the cash. I don't know if that's accurate, but on the under, it does look like there probably is some sentiment in the money being on the under in that one. So I lean to Dallas and the under there. My play is on Carolina. Moving to the NBA, I'm going to actually have a play in this game as well. Game 7, Magic Cavs. And I do like the under in this one too, but I think again, we missed the boat, man. I mean, the professionals come in and just flood the market on the unders in these Game 7s, and the odds makers just know that Game 7 tends to be a tough defensive game. And this has been one of the more defensive-oriented series, too, especially in the games at Cleveland. We saw some really low-scoring games in the first couple games in Cleveland. Odds makers have adjusted big time. I think probably to start the series, I think the totals were somewhere closer to like 210, maybe even. And now we're looking at a total in this one that's got down from 199 just to the under all the way down to 195.5. 76% of the tickets and cash on the over. So it looks like public is coming in on the over. I mean, not really surprising. The games more recently in the series have been higher scoring than those first two games. So a little recency bias there too. The last game went over what this total is, I believe. I think it hit the high 190s in the last game, which was at Orlando, though, and the games were a bit higher scoring at Orlando, I believe, although the last game in Cleveland was one of the higher scoring games as well. I lean to the under because it is game 7. I think you're going to see intense defense here, especially in a series where we've seen intense defense. We did see it in the first couple of games. But I think the line just isn't offering you really that much value at this point with how much it's dropped. Where I do see value, though, and this is where I messed up on the Minnesota game. I also forgot to mention Minnesota is in revenge because Denver knocked them out of the playoffs in the first round last year, which I just didn't think that was that much of a factor, even though I mentioned revenge in the Dallas-Vegas game, which I do think looms larger than it does in like a game 1 with Minnesota against Denver, when Denver is just the better team, and both teams I felt were going to be motivated in that way. But Minnesota just, I think they match up decently against Denver, man. As we saw, they did split the season series and whatever. So unfortunately, yeah. What I was going to say, so I just went on a tangent there. I did not take into account the revenge aspect of that Minnesota-Denver game there based on what happened last year with Denver eliminating Minnesota. But what I was going to say here is that I also didn't take into account that the power ratings guys were kind of disagreeing with the number, and I tend to lean more to the situational side of things. So I do take the power ratings into account, but I should have taken them more into account in that game. Sometimes it's hard to balance them, and the power ratings guys had that game much closer. They have Minnesota basically about even with Denver from what I've seen, and maybe even the slightly better team when they're both completely healthy, which is crazy to think about. I just thought the experience was going to really play a factor in game 1 and the situation coming out of those first two series, which is the way that I've handicapped for a while. I just should not have played it at that number, but Denver would not have covered any number that would have been like accurate either. Like they probably should have been about a 2.5 point favorite, and they wouldn't have covered that, or maybe 3, I guess. And they wouldn't have covered that either. But this game, I think we are getting value here on the Cleveland Cavaliers side. They're sitting at 3 with juice. You can get straight up 3 minus 110 right now. Why is this line Cavs 3? The Cavs were minus 5.5 in the first two games. They were minus 4.5 in the other game at home, I believe. And now all of a sudden it's 3. Like, do we have injuries that I'm not aware about here? I guess I should look at that real quick before I'm about to pull the trigger on this one, man. Before I'm about to play this. It says, I don't think there are really any huge injuries to really be concerned about that are going to affect the line that much in this game. I think the biggest injury has kind of been Jarrett Allen for Cleveland. So I guess maybe that's really is that really affecting the number that much? So, I mean, he is a guy that plays a lot of minutes. Sure, he's kind of a key component, but he's played in every. Oh no, wait, he got injured in game 4, I guess, and then he did not play in game 5 or 6, and he may or may not come back for this game. But I don't think it's a huge deal. I don't think it's that much of a factor. I think we're getting line value on the Cleveland Cavs here. So that's where I'm going based on what we've seen from the other lines in the series. I think the line has been adjusted down too much. The Cavs have won every game at home so far, and they've covered 2 of the 3. Of course, they didn't cover the other game, the most recent game at home, but I think they probably should have. To be honest, they were winning that game by 10 at the end of the first quarter, and then they just really didn't hold it up after that. Cavs have 66% of the tickets on them, 82% of the cash on them. So they have the cash discrepancy. Looks like there is the money coming in on the Cavs side. I agree with it. I mean, this is game 7, man. The Cavs have the playoff experience. I think they are the better team slightly over the Magic, and this line is basically only giving them home court and not much more. So I think it's shortchanging the Cavs. I don't know if it's just because of the Jarrett Allen injury or not, but not Jared Allen, the football player there, but the Minnesota Vikings, I think, but Jarrett Allen on the Cleveland Cavs. He is one of their players who plays the most minutes, though, so a fairly key player for the Cavs, but even if he doesn't play, which it seems like he's questionable, so it's possible he does suit up, especially because it's game 7 and he's been out the last couple of games. We'll see what happens there, but the Cash seems to agree with this. I like all that for the Cavs, so that's what I'm going. I think the experience does loom large here as well. Like I said, it's a game 7 at home, a team that has been in the playoffs before, whereas Orlando, I believe the Cavs made it to the second. Did they make it to the second round last year too? Did they? I seem to remember them playing the Knicks in the first round, and I think the Cavs. Did they beat the Knicks or did they lose to the Knicks? Maybe they lost to the Knicks. I don't even remember. The Cavs been here before. Magic, young team. This is their first playoff series, man, and they have not played a Game 7 road game before. These young players have not. So that might get to them a little bit. And the Magic have been the much better home team than road team. They've had a big home-road dichotomy. As I keep pointing out, they've been significantly worse on the road than at home. So that's what we'll go with there. We'll move over to MLB, where I'm just going to jump on 3 pitching mismatches and just basically say fuck it. One of these is going to be, and I don't think that the bullpen situations are bad in these either, but maybe I'm overweighing the starting pitching a little bit. But first one, I'm going to be honest, to take the Seattle Mariners here. This is a 1-1 series right now, I think, so we don't have that team trying to avoid a sweep situation going on in this one, but I think this is a pitching mismatch, man. Seattle against Houston, and the market, for some reason, looks like it's in disagreement with that. Houston up from -120 to -132 with 51% of the cash on them, 65% of the tickets over the other side on Seattle. So I'm going against what I see in the market here, man. It almost looks like the pros versus Joes, the public coming in on Seattle. I forgot to mention that, the public is slightly on the Cleveland Cavs in that NBA game, but as I pointed out, the cash is more so on the Cavs. So the public probably not as much on the Cavs as they should be, really. They probably think, this has been a really close series. It's a game 7. The last game was really close at Cleveland, and then Orlando won the most recent game. Like, we have to go back to game 2 for Cleveland to even have won a game by margin. So the public might think, we're getting value here taking the underdog, potentially, even though it looks like more of the public is still on the Cavs. But that might be some of the sentiment that's getting involved there. So I'm fading that. In this Seattle-Houston baseball game here, though, for some reason, the public is coming in on Seattle at 65%, even though 51% of the tickets on Houston and the cash has moved it looks like it's moved the money line up on Houston. So I don't like that, but I don't see it at all. I don't understand it, to be honest. I do understand that the public may come in on Seattle just because they're the team that has the better record. Houston has a really ugly record. Yeah, for sure. Obviously, they do. They had a bad start to the season. They're getting used to their new manager, whatever. Houston does still have a good team. They have a lot of good players on this team. There's no doubt about that. But this is a spot where you just got to look at the individual pitching matchup, in my opinion here, man. And even though, yes, we're playing a kind of public Seattle underdog, kind of a public underdog that has the better record. I mean, I think Houston does still carry name recognition here. Houston did lose yesterday after winning the first game of the series. Fine. Logan Gilbert. Seattle's got a few good arms, man, and another one of them is going today. Logan Gilbert had a pretty good start yesterday, although he walked too many guys, but he went 8 innings, man. So Mariners only used 1 reliever for 1 inning in a 5-0 game. So Mariners bullpen is in a pretty good situation, although the Astros bullpen's not in a terrible situation either, because they really basically only used 1 reliever as well, in relief of Valdez, who they kind of just left in, didn't pitch very well. They used Belak to basically just finish off the game and eat up 3 innings. So the Astros did save their bullpen. Yes, that is true. But I don't know. The Astros bullpen, I think, has kind of struggled a bit this year as well. So I think the bullpen situation is just kind of a bit of a wash, maybe a slight advantage actually to Seattle, because they did only use 1, whereas Houston did use one of their long relief guys, so he won't be available. I don't know if they need him in this game, but look at the starting pitching matchup, man. I think it becomes clear. This looks like a pretty giant mismatch to me. We're on the Seattle side. I mean, you had Logan Gilbert pitch yesterday. He's one of their young guns. Now we got Bryce Miller pitching this time, and he is another one of those guys. He's 25. He made his major league debut last year and pitched almost the full season last year. And between last year and this year, he's a 3.83 ERA and 1.09 WHIP on his career. 158 strikeouts and 166 2/3. So not a dominant strikeout pitcher, but only 38 walks. So definitely has a lot of control. 4.2 strikeout walk ratio. That's good. So you got to like that about him. He has control. He really doesn't walk a lot of guys. This year, he's actually been excellent as well. Although the number of walks has actually been too high, but over his career, that really hasn't been a problem. This season, he has 35 and a third innings pitched. He does have 12 walks, which is a little concerning. 39 strikeouts, so that's good. More than one per inning. That's not bad. And he's only allowed 19 hits in 35 and a third innings. So I talked about that's Dylan Cease-like, basically, in a lot of ways, giving up a few hits, giving up kind of too many walks, and striking out a lot. But I kind of like that profile. Just got to get the walks down. But he's been really difficult to hit, is what that tells you. Strikeout numbers high, hit numbers very low. And since his first start, which was kind of a bad start against my Boston Red Sox to open the season, give up 4 earned runs in that one and walked 2 guys, 2 home runs. Since then, he hasn't allowed more than 2 earned runs in any start, and that was a start against Texas, who does still have a lot of offensive firepower, even though that hasn't totally come to fruition this season. And if you throw that start out, he's only allowed 1 earned run or less in all of his other starts, and he's gone at least 6 innings in all of the other starts. And in the month of April, 33 strikeouts and 10 walks and 30 and a third. So similar to his overall stats, I guess, but only 13 hits allowed. In his most recent start, dominant performance against the Braves, 7-inning, 2-hit performance, 10 strikeouts and 1 walk against maybe the best offense in baseball. And he hasn't faced easy offenses, man. He's faced Boston. Their offense is not bad. Brewers, and he really did well against the Brewers. A very similar game to Atlanta. 3-hit, 7-inning performance. 7 strikeouts, 1 walk, and he didn't pitch that badly in the game after that against the Cubs, who also can hit decently. Then he pitched against Cincinnati, so these offenses aren't that bad. Texas and then Atlanta. He has not had an easy go of it, man. He's putting up stats like that, 2.04 ERA and 0.88 whip. Despite the amount of walks that he's had, he's been so unhittable that his whip is still really low. I like it, man. And he's got similar numbers in his career against the Houston Astros, too, over a decent-sized sample. The Houston hitters, even though they are good hitters, they're 6 for 41 off of him lifetime with 1 extra base hit, a double. No, excuse me, 3 extra base hits, a double, 2 home runs. 6 strikeouts, 3 walks. That's not a great ratio, but 6 for 41 is a 146 batting average and a pretty low 522 OPS. So Bryce Miller, just good stats overall, man, except for the walks, and good stats against these Houston hitters. Over on the other side, yeah, it's a completely different story. Hunter Brown, also a young guy, but he has not really panned out for Houston. He made his debut in 2022, mostly came out of the bullpen, made 2 starts. And then last year, he made 29 starts in basically his first and only full season with Houston, most of it as a starter. And last year, he had a 5.09 ERA, 1.36 whip. Over his career, it's even worse because this season he's been even worse. 5.2 ERA on his career, 1.43 whip. He does have 224 strikeouts in 199 innings, so he has pretty good strikeout numbers, but he only has a 2.9 strikeout walk ratio because he's walked 76 guys over that span in his career. And this year has been kind of more of the same. He's just been getting rocked hit-wise, and he's been giving up too many walks. Even though he has a decent strikeout number this season, 24 strikeouts in 23 innings, he's allowed 37 hits. That's awful, man. And 14 walks. He's been putting so many men on base, more than 2 an inning this season so far. 2.22 whip and a 9.78 ERA. Granted, yes, he has also faced some good offenses. Yankees, Texas, Atlanta. And then, Cleveland, they're okay. Washington, maybe not so great. And Kansas City, I don't know how great they are. So he hasn't really faced the easiest offenses either. Although I think Gilbert, I think Bryce Miller has faced the tougher offenses of the two. And his stats are just significantly better than Hunter Brown's. Browns are just horrific. And then in his career against Seattle, they're 8 for 23 off him lifetime, 3 doubles. They don't have any home runs off him. Does have an 8.2 strikeout walk ratio against him, but it still amounts to a 348 opponent batting average in, a somewhat small sample size, 23 at bats, but still it's a decent sample size. And the whole lineup basically has seen him before. 348 batting average and 878 OPS. So Brown has the far worse numbers just over his entire career, over this season, and against the opposing hitters. It's just very clear that Bryce Miller is the significantly better pitcher here. And I just hope I don't have to eat my words when I say things like that. But just, I mean, anything can happen in one game, but just, I don't think there's any debate about that. So that'll be a play. Seattle Mariners plus 115. Then I think I'll be going with the market signals in the other two games that I'm on. And one is going to be to lay a price here. This kind of looks pros versus Joes, like with the Atlanta Braves. Unfortunately, kind of missed the boat on this one a little bit. The Braves open a minus 101 road favorite. So it actually looks like the Dodgers might have opened a small favorite. And this is shot up all the way to the Braves being a minus 134 favorite. I don't mind playing the minus 134 money line. A little bit tough to do as a road favorite there with Atlanta, but you could lay the run line as well, get a much better price at minus 109, so kind of more in that minus 110 range if you lay the minus one run. You're still playing them to win either way. It's just that if they win, in that case, you'll push the bet instead of winning, which isn't exactly the worst. So that you want to try to do the best thing there, but I think the value maybe is a little bit better going that way. This looks like pros versus Joes, man. 51% of the tickets on the Dodgers, 60% of the cash over on the other side on the Atlanta Braves. I mean, we're looking at this. Public's probably coming in and thinking, well, this is like the big series of the weekend, man. This is a huge series between two of the top teams in baseball. No doubt about that. Braves against Dodgers. They both have good offenses for sure. Both have some good pitchers in there, but in this case, I think we have one good pitcher against one bad pitcher. And the Dodgers, public might be thinking, oh my God, we're getting the Dodgers. Like, they have the slightly better record. We think they're the slightly better team. And they've won both games this series. And they won 11-2 yesterday, which I believe was a game where Ohtani kind of lit it up from an offensive perspective. I think he's not even allowed to pitch this year. So he's just he's purely just like a hitter right now, I think. But he's been starting to light it up as a hitter there on the Dodgers. So I think it's just the public is going to have a little bit of sentiment towards the Dodgers, even though they know the Braves are good. They saw the Dodgers won 11-2 yesterday, man, and have won both games in the series so far. But now that puts the Braves in the sweep avoiding role, man, and that gives you a little bit of an extra motivation there. I think the Braves are going to want to do something about that, even though this is a big series. The Dodgers, especially after just beating up Atlanta yesterday, they might be getting a little bit, it's possible they get like a little bit complacent, thinking, yeah, we just dominate this team, whatever. And Atlanta might just be a little bit more fired up after that because they got blown out yesterday. They're going to want to get one of these games in the series, man. And yesterday, if we look at the bullpen usage yesterday, in that blowout win for the Dodgers, I think it's about even, really. Bryce Elder to get knocked out early, but then the Braves used Lee for 2 2/3, so they kind of saved their bullpen. They used two other relievers. The Braves really did not use any of their best relievers, though. They kind of just saved the rest of their pen by kind of using their worst relievers for the most part in that game because the game was over. But on the other side, the game was also over, and the Dodgers just kind of used kind of a couple of their worst relievers as well after a very good start from Glasnow. Glasnow definitely had the upper hand in that one over Elder. Glasnow certainly, I think, the better of those two pitchers there. But now I think the tide flips a little bit. So I think the bullpen usage is about a wash there. I would say both teams kind of saved most of their better relievers coming into this game. And we look at this game, and Atlanta, we got Max Fried pitching for them. Max Fried. That's how I like my chicken, man. Fried to the maximum amount. Max Fried. People are going to come in and look at this and see that Max Fried, excuse me. People are going to see that he has the worst ERA of the two. His ERA is 4.02, which, I mean, it's not terrible. But people are going to look at this and think, oh, we're getting the Dodgers who have won both games so far in the series. They have the better record. They're at home, and they're an underdog? What's up with that? And they have the starting pitcher as the better ERA. Yeah, but dig deeper, man. Max Fried, I think it becomes clear he is the pitcher that you'd rather be on in this game. He's the somewhat younger pitcher. I mean, Paxton's on the other side. I'll talk about him in a minute. He is kind of a journeyman and really has been, I think, overrated throughout much of his career. He has this like thing about it. Well, I should talk about him in a minute, but he has this thing about him. It's, Paxton. He's like this very good pitcher, but like looking into his numbers, he's just kind of been an okay pitcher, really. Fried, I like him better as far as how this sets up here, man. Fried, I think, has been the better pitcher this season so far, and I think maybe even possibly he's just the better pitcher in general, but I think against the opposing hitters, he's also better. Yeah, he has a 4.02 ERA this year, which is a little bit worse than what Paxton's is, but he has a 1.18 whip on the season, man. So he's been pitching pretty well. One thing I don't love is that he's coming off a no-hit performance, and for some reason he got taken out of that game. He pitched 6 innings. He went 100 pitches, though, so they had to take him out, I guess, because it's just a lot of pitches to be throwing. But they took him out when he was pitching a no-hitter. That flew by me. I didn't even know that happened. I don't know why they took him out. How do you take a guy out when he's in the middle of a no-hitter, unless he got injured or something? But he was throwing a no-hitter against Seattle. They wound up losing the game, I think, on a walk-off or something. He did that, and then in the previous game, he threw a complete game 3-hitter against Miami. So that at least tells you that after that dominant performance against Miami, who does suck, he did not fall back down to earth after that and pitch a really bad game. In fact, he pitched a very good game the game after that against Seattle. So I just think he's just pitching well right now. He's got a 24-8 strikeout walk ratio in the month of April. So I think you can kind of throw out his first start. We had 3 walks and 1 strikeout, which does amount to him having a 25-11 strikeout walk ratio on the entire season, which isn't that great, but he's only allowed 26 hits and 31 and a third too. So he's done pretty well as far as that's concerned. He has not allowed very many hits. His strikeout numbers, not terrific. He's not a guy that comes in and blows people away, but he's really been turning it on too, man. I mean, his first 2 starts were just terrible, and then since then he's allowed 1, 3, 0, and 0 earned runs, although, of course, 2 of those were against an awful Miami offense. One of them was at Petco, or excuse me, is Petco? No, Safeco in Seattle. What is it called now? It's not Safeco anymore, whatever it's called now, which is a pitcher-friendly park. So, yeah, fine. He played at Seattle and faced Miami twice, and then his worst of those starts was against the best of the offenses that he faced in that stretch, Houston. So, yeah, fine. He hasn't faced that many of the better offenses, and when he has, he's had his worst starts. Fine. Philly, Arizona, and Houston have been his worst starts. Those are the best offenses he's faced. All of that is true. That's fine. But overall, his stats pretty decent this season. And then against the Dodgers, we have a huge sample size to work with here against these Dodgers hitters. And he's pitched pretty well against them. Big sample size. They are 31 for 142 off him lifetime. He's allowed 2 doubles, a triple, 7 home runs. 7 home runs seems a little bit high, but still 31 for 142. He has 46 strikeouts against them, 14 walks. That ratio, not the best, but again, he's not the most dominant strikeout guy. Maybe has slightly high walk numbers as well, but that amounts to a 218 opponent batting average and a huge sample size. So Fried has been pretty good against these Dodgers hitters to the tune of 218 and a 683 OPS, which is not very high either. It's kind of I would say, middle of the pack, mediocre range, with that batting average quite low. So Fried has been tough to hit kind of just this season in general and for these Dodgers hitters. Whereas on the other side, man, I'm going into way too much detail on these pitching matchups. You got James Paxton going. He's got a 3.51 ERA and a 3.0 record. So, again, I think that is going to cause the public to come in and look and say, oh, we like Paxton here. But he's an older guy, man. And look at his whip, though. 1.68 whip this season. That's really not good. 1.68. That's terrible, to be honest. He's been putting way too many guys on base. He's given up 21 hits in 25 2/3. That's not awful this season, but then 15 strikeouts, not a dominant strikeout number there at all. It seems like his strikeout ability is going down as he's had a better strikeout ability throughout parts of his career. He also has 22 walks. No, that is not a misprint. He has 7 more walks than strikeouts this season. So he has a strikeout walk ratio that's below 1 this season. 15 strikeouts and 22 walks. When do you ever see that from a starting pitcher like that? And how could that amount to him having a 3.5 ERA? Something's got to give, man. And over the last couple of seasons, last year was the biggest sample size that we have from him since 2019, which is 2019 wasn't really that good either. A 1.28 whip, but his season with the Red Sox, it got worse last season, coming back from really not having pitched that much since 2019. For the Red Sox, 1.31 whip, and he was somehow able to keep his ERA sort of okay at 4.5, but I just think he's nearing the end of his career, man. He's 35. He had all those years off during all the COVID bullshit and whatever, and I don't know if we're going to see him return to form and to his like his best seasons were in 2017 and 2018 when somehow he had figured it out a bit and had really good strikeout numbers those seasons for Seattle. But other than that, his career actually hasn't really been that good. And then 2014 was also a pretty good season for him. But other than that, not very good, really, unfortunately for him. So his overall career stats wind up looking pretty good with a 1.24 whip, which is only slightly high for my liking. 3.69 ERA, pretty good. 947 strikeouts in 876 and a third innings, 286 walks. But even so, he's really on the backslide now towards the back end of his career, man. That 3.3 strikeout walk ratio on his career, not horrible, but it's been getting worse and worse. This season, as I put it out, it's 0.7. I don't know how it gets that much worse than that. And then against these Atlanta hitters, they really haven't seen him. So you might say that's a little bit of an edge to Paxton, but I don't know. With the way that he's been pitching, he's been in the league so long. Like, there is some footage on him at this point, and only two guys have seen him before, and it's almost entirely just Travis d'Arnaud, as Olsen is 0 for 1 off in lifetime, but all of it amounts to 3 for 8 off of Paxton with 2 home runs, both from d'Arnaud. So d'Arnaud has totally dominated him. And 4 strikeouts and 1 walk. I mean, that ratio is fine, obviously. So d'Arnaud has hit 2 home runs off him and struck out 3 times and walked 1. So it's been really a hit or miss, literally. But that amounts to, with just those 2 hitters having seen him, it amounts to a 375 batting average and 1,694 OPS. So d'Arnaud has been the only hitter that really has any sort of decent sample size off him, and he's hit him well. So I like Max Fried in this one, and I like Atlanta to avoid the sweep in that one. And finishing it out, another pitching mismatch and sweep avoiding scenario here. I like the Cincinnati Reds, and I think we're getting a cash discrepancy on this one too. We see the Reds creeping up a little bit from minus 114 to minus 118. Small home favorite, 58% of the cash, 69% of the, or excuse me, 69% of the cash. 58% of the tickets, 69% of the cash on. So we see more of the cash coming in on the side of the Reds. It looked like looking like the money line's moving up on the Reds a little bit. Here we have a situation where the public is not going to want to come in on the Reds, man. The Orioles are hot right now. They've won 3 games in a row, 5 of their last 6 games, including winning 3 out of 4 against the Yankees prior to coming into this game. And I was wrong about the first game in this series. They did not suffer the letdown and actually shut the Reds out in the first game. We've had 2 low-scoring, pretty close games in the series so far. Baltimore's won both of them, though, and now Baltimore's just on this big run. But I think that puts us in a spot where Baltimore, just like I said with the Dodgers, I think they might get a little bit complacent here, man, as this series has been sandwiched in between that big series against New York. They've won the first 2 now against Cincinnati. They might take Cincinnati a little bit lightly after that. Baltimore's record is up to 22-11 now. I think they're still in first place in the AL East. They have a really good record right now, even though they're only 1 game ahead of the Yankees. Cincinnati's been headed in the opposite direction, and Baltimore does have their natural rival, I think, from the National League up next, which I don't know how big a series that really is, but it's against the Washington Nationals. So I don't know if they'll be looking ahead to that at all. And Washington, not anything to really look forward to that much, but it is still that like natural rival. Washington below 500, but still that Baltimore-Washington series could be kind of a big series. I mean, it's that geographic rival, like I said. Cincinnati, they've lost 4 games in a row in 5 of their last 6, and they've lost, I don't know, whatever it is, 7 of their last 9. So they've been really sliding. They were well above 500 at the point before that. They were at, what were they at? They were at 14-11 or 14-10, and since then now they're 16-17. So they've fallen below 500 now after coming into the series above 500. So I think that's a little bit of extra motivation as well. Not only are they trying to avoid the sweep here, but they just fell below 500. So I think that's a little bit of an edge there situationally for the Reds. Looking at the bullpen spot here, I think the bullpen situation is actually maybe a slight advantage for the Reds here, even though I don't really think they have the better bullpen in general. But yesterday, the Orioles had to use their best, some of their best relievers. They used Kimbrel, who I think has been functioning as their closer. And although they wound up using Cano in the save role yesterday, so I don't know what's up with that. But Baltimore used 3 of their better relievers, I think, that kind of used the back end of their bullpen yesterday, whereas the Reds also used 3 of their relievers. They used Nick Martinez, or is it Nick Martinez? I forget. I get the Martinez's mixed up. Yeah, Nick Martinez. I think he's been in and out of the starting rotation, and they used him to kind of save some of the bullpen. So they didn't use much of their bullpen, man. And they used only 2 other relievers. So both pitching staffs used 3 relievers, but Baltimore used a couple of their better relievers than Cincinnati did in the closeout role in the game there. So I think all of that is a slight edge to Cincinnati. And then where I think we get the rest of the edges in the starting pitching matchup here, where we have Dean Kremer going for Baltimore. I've never really liked what I've seen out of Kremer. He has a 4.19 ERA this year, which is not bad. 1.08 whip is pretty good. It's indicative that maybe his ERA should actually be a little bit lower. He's pitched pretty well this year. Fine, that's for sure. 31 strikeouts and 10 walks and 34 and a third, 27 hits allowed. So he's kept the hit numbers down. That's pretty good. The walks are a little bit high. The strikeout numbers, they're fine. A little bit low maybe. And he's been pitching decently, but in some aspects, he's been getting away with it. And across his most recent 3 starts, he's actually seen an uptick in his walk numbers. But he faced the Yankees in his most recent start. They're a pretty good offense. But in Kansas City and Anaheim, not really good offense. Kansas City, I don't know how good their offense really is. In those 3 games, he walked 8 guys and struck out 17. So I don't know. His walk numbers have been going up a little bit. Looking at his career stats, they're worse than what his stats are this season. So I kind of expect him to go back to what we've seen out of him the last couple of years. Last season being a full season with Baltimore, and then near full season before that, and then kind of a half season in his first season. His stats over that whole span, and he had a few starts in his debut season in 2020, all with Baltimore. Over his entire career, 4.34 ERA, 1.32 whip. So that's not good at all. 1.32 whip, pretty high. Only 344 strikeouts in 404 and 2/3 innings. So he's actually not that great a strikeout pitcher in general. And 136 walks. So we might see his walk numbers maybe start to increase a little bit too. As I said, we've been seeing in his last few starts, his walk numbers have started getting worse. So we might see him start gravitating back towards what we've seen out of him the last couple of years, what we think that he really is, rather than where his whip is this year. His whip this year is kind of an outlier as far as his career goes. So I don't think Kremer is that good. And then looking at his stats against these Reds hitters, even though, yes, only 5 of their hitters have ever seen him before, but they are 10 for 16 off him lifetime with a home run. He only has 1 strikeout against them, 2 walks. That amounts to a 625 batting average and 1,497 OPS. So Kremer, I mean, yeah, his numbers, even though it's a pretty small sample size, those are not good numbers against these Cincinnati hitters. So that looks bad. And then on the other side, Nick Lodolo is pitching, and he's the slightly younger guy. And I think he's flying under the radar, man. He debuted in 2022, didn't pitch much in 2023. I don't know if it was an injury or what, but over his career, I think really his stats were just bad in that shortened 2023 season. Over his career, he's got a 3.95 ERA, 1.3 whip, which you'd like to see go down a little bit. 209 strikeouts, though, and 161 and 2/3. So very high strikeout rate from Lodolo. So he has the better strikeout stuff. He's a 6'6", looming mound presence there. So I actually like this, and I think he's trending in the right direction. He's a young guy, tall guy who has really good strikeout stuff. It's just his problem is he's been wild. 55 walks over his career there in those 161 and 2/3 innings. So he's got to keep those numbers down a little bit. Oh, man, I got to finish this video quickly. 3.8 strikeout walk ratio over his career. But this year, 31.6 strikeout walk ratio. I mean, only 15 hits in 24 innings. So very low hit number, very low walk number, too. As I said, his whip is really good. High strikeout rate, too. He's been excellent in his most recent game, a 1-hit, 7-inning performance with 11 strikeouts, 2 walks against San Diego team. Not that good. That's Petco. More pitcher-friendly park there. He's just the better pitcher, I think, in general, man. Baltimore has seen him, but they're only 3 for 15 off him lifetime with 0 extra base hits, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk. That's a 200 batting average and a very low 450 OPS. So I like Lodolo as the better pitcher in this one, man, for all those reasons. I don't know if there's much else to say. And in these starting pitching roles here, I just don't really expect them to have like just given the situation these pitchers are in, facing like good teams and stuff like that, like Fried and Lodolo and whatever, I just don't expect them to really have like a hangover spot or a letdown spot, even though they're coming off of like a pretty good performance. They're also facing another good team here in a spot where they're trying to help their team avoid a sweep. So I do expect them to be motivated. So that's going to do it for me, man. Cleveland Cavs -3, Carolina Hurricanes -111, Seattle Mariners +115, Atlanta Braves -1 on the run line, and Cincinnati -116 money line. Peace.